Welcome to the Lost Rewatch. It continues. We're into, I think this is the third episode of season 3 that I've done because I did one last night. But we're doing further instructions and every man for himself. I'm joined by Ralph and Eric.
Hey.
How's it going, guys?
Good.
Hey.
And if anyone's in the chat, you can jump in at any time and make a comment. So I think we should get right to it. What did you guys think of further instructions?
You want me to go?
Yeah,
I think everybody knows. Anybody that has listened to me on this podcast, regardless of what the topic is, it could be non-lost, and further instructions comes up.
Why don't you give your theory that you had back in the day? Or do you want to do that? You want to complain about it first, or you want to give your theory first?
Well,
because I was telling Eric before we started recording, I said I was like 100% in on your theory. I thought it was a great theory.
Well, here's the thing: is I found it to be a pointless episode then, and I never rewatched it. I've rewatched Lost a ton of times, and I always skip it because I do not like this episode. So this
you don't like time. You don't like naked Desmond? Is that what it is?
No, that's fine. shirtless Locke, that's fine. It always irritated me. I felt like none of it mattered, and it left on a cliffhanger, which was never really sort of the flashback was sort of a cliffhanger that never really went anywhere. And so by the end of season 3, spoilers, we find out that the Jack flashback is really a flash forward. And so I'm like, oh, so maybe we're going to find out that further instructions is actually a flash forward. And we're seeing a future John Locke. And that story is going to come in season 4, where we find out he's been off the island the whole time and he's living on this farm. And I'm like, cool, that might make sense. Never happens.
Yeah.
And just solely based on Locke's hair, I believe that this is no longer flash forward.
Rogaine.
I know, and that's the thing. And I was like,
restore.
It could be that.
Yeah.
Restore now.
Yeah.
We put a lot of ad bucks into Restore. This podcast is brought to you by Restore.
I need to break up. Then I need to rush out and get some.
Yeah, you got to call them.
So, rewatching it, I feel like the flashback is doesn't help move things along. I feel like it's out of character for John Locke, especially in the flashback form. And then the on-island stuff, I feel like doesn't really do anything to propel the story forward. And I think one of the reasons why I didn't like this episode, and I just realized today that I didn't realize this was so early into season 3. And I think one of the issues I had with it maybe back then was I think we waited we waited a whole hiatus between the finale of season 2 and then the beginning of season 3. People who are just binge watching this now don't realize that we waited something like 6 months or more for these episodes. For these episodes to come out, and we got one episode, and if I recall, it was all about Jack, Kate, and Sawyer on Hydra, and then the second episode, a week later, was more of the same of them, I believe, and the whole
glass ballerina.
That's right. So the whole thing we were waiting for is to see what happened to all the other Islanders, and so we finally get it. And it's this weird story about Locke and Charlie for some reason. But the on-island stuff is it doesn't really follow anybody. Like, it's not like we finally catch up to Hurley, and all he tells us is information we already know. There's nothing in this that really propels the story. It creates this sweat lodge thing, which is fine. I feel like the sweat lodge is within Locke's character. As far as that's something where I feel like, okay, we could have learned that. That's something that is obvious as far as Locke's character is concerned. By the time he gets on the island, of course he would learn about Sweat Lodge. But the flashback has to tell us when he learned that, and it's not very interesting. It's like, why even tell us? Like, we already understand that Locke's been on a walkabout, or was going to go on a walkabout, and he's a hunter and he can do all these things already. So why try to justify this sweat lodge thing?
So I'm gonna offer kind of an alternate take.
Okay.
I remember watching. So I think season 3 was the first season I watched live as it was airing.
Okay.
For Lost, because I had gotten into the show, I think right around this time or during the break, and so these first 6 episodes of season 3 that aired like before the break, like I remember there being a lot of pain at the time. It's like, oh, will Sawyer and Kate ever get out of these cages? It seemed like forever, and there's definitely I think there's definitely, it could be said, there's like a slump in the beginning of this season, that the season gets off to kind of a rocky start. But watching it out of time, watching it like just today, further instructions, I was like, oh, there's actually some really good storytelling happening here. I was really surprised to like how much I liked the episode when rewatching it now, with kind of all of that other stuff, like the contemporary, like what was happening then, kind of just forgotten just in the past. So what I think it does well, I agree. I was actually surprised the flashback you never really find out if the government intervenes or if they get arrested for all that marijuana. But I think that what it's trying to do is, again, raise the question of whether John Locke is a hunter or a farmer. And I think it just quite potently, in sort of the scene where he almost shoots the guy, well, doesn't really shoot the guy, but Eddie, really, Locke thinks he's a hunter and he wants to be a hunter, but he's just, he falls short because it's something about him. He's a victim. He's got that trusting nature that allows him to time and time again be manipulated, like by his father, like by Eddie. And I forget where we're at with the Locke's whole father backstory, how much we knew at that time, but it seems to, I won't disagree. It's like kind of retreading some of the same stuff we already knew about Locke. But I think because of where season 2 ended, with him convincing everybody to not push the button, and now there's that this whole episode of Locke has to clean up his mess, and I'm like, yes, because season 2, like, I don't get annoyed with Locke very often, but he's a very annoying character when I do get annoyed with him. And the end of season 2 arc, this episode was like a perfect antithesis of like, you gotta like fix your shit. And so I appreciate the episode for being like, that was wrong. The island is going to punish you by making you lose your voice because you used your voice to like convince everybody that pushing the button wasn't important. And it was. So I like in concept, I really like the idea of Locke has to atone now.
I do agree with you that Locke, we didn't need another episode telling us that Locke was gullible. I mean, he brings Eddie in, and you're and the two people, you're an idiot, Locke, you're this. I mean, he finally he seemed at peace. He finally, all he wanted was a family. He just wanted some acceptance. He wanted love. All right, we got another episode of Locke being kicked to the curb again. I already was. Of course, the flashbacks at that point, we were kind of. I think at that point we didn't really need any more flashbacks.
I mean, this is the last season of flashbacks. I mean, sure, we're going to get some sprinkled in the following seasons, but for the most part, we're. This is the beginning of, the end as far as flashbacks go, because at the end we get the flash forwards. I feel like it feels, it's such a strange episode because it makes it seem like Eddie and this farm should be more important than just a one episode thing. It feels like Eddie should come back at some point. He should be somewhere in this storyline. Maybe
they had plans and they just didn't get to it.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe. But I think, like Eric said, I'll take care of this. I will fix it. I will make it right. And in the end, obviously, I think he did the right thing. You don't shoot someone in cold blood. but he just didn't have the chops. He couldn't do it. And eventually it does lead to him being manipulated by Ben, who eventually kills him because he's just so
But it doesn't really come up later, does it? Like he never has to deal with this dilemma again, whether to kill somebody or not. I don't believe. Like it doesn't. I don't think it really adds anything to the story as far as Locke goes. I think it would make his character more interesting if he actually did pull the trigger, because then we'd get something new for the Locke character, and then sort of down the road we wouldn't know what he was going to do. But because he doesn't pull the trigger, it feels like we already know that from Locke.
But that would be out of character for Locke, though, wouldn't it?
I guess, but what's the point of the story if it's just more of the same? Yeah. We already know a lot of this information already. If we found out that Locke killed somebody in the past, we would have completely done a 180 on his character and maybe reevaluated stuff from before.
But you think the reason they didn't do that because Locke, as like Eric said, he's irritating and there's things he does. I mean, I complain about Locke nonstop, but great character. But he's the kind of person you just go, it just drives you crazy. But you loved him. You cared about it. And if he killed someone in cold blood, it'd be like, I can't.
I feel like with the ties of Mr. Echo in this episode, where he must go save Mr. Echo, I think if he did pull the trigger, I think it would be an interesting dynamic between him and Mr. Echo, because Mr. Echo is kind of the opposite. He was a murderer, and now he's changing his ways. Mm-hmm. I could see if Locke were to make that mistake and have it feel like this horrible thing that's weighing on him, that relationship between him and Mr. Echo could kind of grow, and Mr. Echo can kind of more teach him, how to cope with it and how to overcome it. Because that's Echo's whole storyline. Is dealing with the mistakes of his past. And I feel like with Locke, he didn't make that mistake. He's a good person by not killing that guy. I mean, he's just a regular person, because I don't think any of us would do that. But you know what I mean? So there's nothing really to grow. There's really nothing to grow from this experience. We already knew that Locke's not a murderer.
Right.
So I feel like with this, let's say he were to kill someone. He killed Eddie. Let's say he kills Eddie. And then from now on, his flashbacks, especially with his father, you'll never know what Locke is thinking. But because he's a good person and didn't do it, every flashback from here on out, Locke's going to be a good person and just get pushed around more. So it would have been cool to see sort of that breaking point for Locke. Even if it was something where the gun jammed. I know it's cliche, but he had the intent to do it, but he really didn't do it. And maybe that weighs heavily on him. But I feel like in this episode, there's nothing really learned new about Locke, especially so early in the season. This is episode 3, and technically the first Locke episode was episode 3 in season 1. And that's the greatest episode of Lost ever. This is still my least favorite. And I don't, it's rough because I like the character Locke. I just wish the flashback had more to do with the on island story. I like when they parallel. We'll talk about that in the next episode. I think Every Man for Himself is the title.
Yes.
They sort of parallel each other. I always like that when the backstory parallels with the on island story, and really the only thing that's similar or happens that's along the same lines is the Sweat Lodge, and the Sweat Lodge isn't even a big part of the flashback.
I think what I like about the Sweat Lodge is just that it's a new take on the old concept of the island is sentient, but you can talk to it, you can have.
I like I like the concept of it on the island. It's really cool. I like that he sees Boone and talks to Boone. I'm a big fan of Boone.
Oh, and that dream sequence. We got to talk about the dream sequence.
Yeah, the dream sequence is great.
That's basically telescribing the rest of the season. Characters' motives and stuff are totally Boone's just he's helping himself. They'll be fine for now.
Right.
Kind of a thing.
Yeah, that was fun to look at. I forgot about that scene. And it was nice to go in and see if there were Easter eggs or sort of foreshadowing of what was to come. Yeah. And I like that sort of Hurley's is at the ticket desk.
Yes.
And he's the one handing out tickets. And I feel like that could be could even set up. I know this is a long shot, but set up his future at the end of the finale of Lost, where he becomes the one who is in charge of the island. He's the one in charge of sending everyone on their journey. He's also the one that I believe created the Flash Sideways universe,
Yeah.
So he's kind of the gatekeeper of that. And so I kind of liked him being behind the counter. And I mean, there's no way that they thought of that before they got to season 6.
Oh,
but
you never know.
But I enjoy watching it, and they don't flat out tell you why everyone's doing what they're doing in this vision. But I do like looking at it and trying to decipher what it means, like for the future of the characters.
I think maybe this will be kind of in the realm of, I know Damon Lindelof has been very, very critical of that episode where Charlie is selling copy machines. From
Fire plus water.
Was that in that? Was that in Fire?
Or maybe it wasn't Fire.
No, Fire plus Water is like the one where Locke like punches him in the face.
That's right. Yeah,
that gets mentioned on in this episode really well. But there's some extraneous episode, and it like that plot. Damon Lindelof has been like, "It's the worst thing I've ever written." I'll just come out and acknowledge it. It's like a superfluous, like it doesn't do anything. I think this episode, it's Locke on a pot farm. It's kind of in the vein of this is just Locke's superfluous.
And it doesn't seem like it has anything to do with his character, what we've seen before or after in the flashbacks.
And I think there's probably one or more episodes of each of these characters that I feel that way about. Like even in Up and Coming, I'm like, Kate was almost married. Okay, great. She's going to run by the end of it. Like it's not, right. I was like, what's going on? So I think it might be a season 3 thing. Like you're saying, they are really wearing thin on not ideas, but on what you can reasonably execute in terms of like how much backstory can you really fit into these characters before it feels forced or unnecessary, or you start repeating yourself. I think maybe that's like an overall problem that season 3 is having, which they then fixed.
Yeah, I agree. Because like I said, you didn't need another episode telling us that Locke was just, he just wants to believe, and his believing always leads to something going wrong.
But it's important. Yeah.
Something really important happens this season. Like this is probably the most important thing that ever happened to Lost is that too. Halfway through the season, I believe is when ABC and Lost came to agreement on how many episodes they were going to have left.
Okay. Yeah.
And I feel like halfway through season 3, and the last time I did a rewatch, I know the exact moment that happens. It's the Everybody Loves Hurley, I believe. It's the one where they put the VW van back together.
Okay, yeah.
There's a complete shift in the show on that episode, where every episode in season 3 from that point on is just amazing. It's awesome. And there's a couple in before that are good, but the first half of season 3 is kind of it's a little bit rocky. I know I've been talking about this episode for years, and I talk about Further Instructions being on Crazy Hang TV and doing it since I was on the pilot episode with you, pilot part 1 and 2. I'm going to put in another request. This is my next one that you're going to have me on for. So you're going to have to jot this down.
I'm writing it down right now.
Stranger in a Strange Land. And I know that happens this season sometime. I don't know if it's before that VW bus episode or after.
It's the one right before. So you're going to go from a real low to a real high.
Yeah,
because it's Stranger in a Strange Land, and Trisha Tanaka is dead. Trisha Tanaka is dead is the one with the VW bus where they find Roger. Roger Workman.
So I have. Oh my gosh! If it's those 2 episodes, if those are on one episode of Crazy Hang TV, you got to have me on that. Hopefully, those 2 aren't split up.
But that episode, Stranger in a Strange Land, is Jack's selling copiers flashback episode. Like it's everybody has one.
I've talked to this. I've talked to. I think I mentioned it every single Comic-Con. Why that episode is so important to Lost. and it's pretty easy. First of all, they made such a big deal about the tattoos, and I know we're not on that episode, but let me just get this out, and I'm sure everybody's heard me talk about this before. So it finally just kind of gets rid of that whole storyline of how he got the tattoos and what they mean and whatever. Another thing it does that's so important is it shows that Jack travels. It shows that Jack is down on his luck and that he's having an awful time and he's in a really bad place. And it ends with him as a stranger in a strange land, which completely throws you off the scent of the finale being a flash forward when he's on the plane with the beard. It feels like if the finale feels like that is a continuation of that storyline. And so without that, you are probably going to assume it's a flash forward, but because of that stranger in a strange land,
you probably should have saved this for the.
No, but
I've said it like at the last 2 Comic-Cons or 3 Comic-Cons. So I'm going to say it now. I'm going to say it again. I think
where that ties into further instructions, I think that exact point about Jack and throwing you off the scent. At least I think that just like Jack in Stranger in a Strange Land is questioning who and what he is, and he gets the tattoo, which I guess in universe means you're a leader. She tells him that it means he's a leader. Yeah, when she's tattooing him, she's like, "You are a leader." Yeah. Oh man. Anyway, it's just like further instructions. It's more episodes that just reaffirm who, like the character, the nature of each of these characters. Mm-hmm. I don't hate episodes that like completely reaffirm existing things. I think that sometimes, especially due to larger plot movements, it's necessary. Like, I think, again, this episode for Locke, though, like he really needed to have an episode where he could go back to being a man of faith. And I think that because the island works its magical crap on him in this episode, he like comes out a little bit more respectful and a believer. What trashes this episode for me in like the overall series ranking is that he goes and saves Mr. Echo, truly pulls him out of a friggin' bear cave, and then 3 episodes later, Echo dies. So it's like, really, what was the point? Right. What was the grand universal reason for saving Mr. Echo? And we know the actor like didn't get along with the show and all that stuff.
It could have been better if Locke didn't save Echo.
Yeah,
it's almost like the way that Boone dying kind of reshaped his character and his faith in the island. So if the island tells him to go save Echo and then Echo dies, what does that tell John? I think that's more interesting.
Well, it probably tells John that he's got to stop listening to the island.
Right. Right.
Because he even says in the, I think it's the final of season 2, he tells I think he tells Desmond, he goes, yeah, a young man died because of me listening to the island. He didn't have to die. I said he was the sacrifice the island needed, and he didn't, because he's, like you said, Eric, he's lost complete faith. He doesn't have faith in him. He doesn't believe anymore. And this was, that's I did behind this was so he believed again, and so he would become John Locke again, because we needed that to at least to finish the story, right? I mean, if he doesn't save Echo, then what does he have?
I feel like my main issue with this episode is the flashback. It's the one thing that I don't care for. And the fact that it happens so early in the season, I feel like it should have more weight or should be more important. And I felt like because it was at the beginning that there was going to be something that came from that storyline, and nothing really does. So I don't know, maybe this episode could have been later, maybe towards the end of this 6-episode pod, because it really doesn't do much as far as the rest of the storyline. I guess we do get Desmond back and Hurley back, so I guess that's important. But the flashback's just not.
Well, then the regular episode, did it help bring, because Charlie, I mentioned fire plus water, and that's an episode I don't like because it makes Charlie look like a complete jerk. I mean, he's just you can't like Charlie in this episode, and Charlie's one of those characters. I love Charlie. I don't want to hate Charlie. And towards the end, they're trying to rebuild his character. Right. Even in season 2, Claire gives him a kiss. She welcomes him back, back home. And this episode, he could have gone. Okay, because Locke said people that hang around me, bad things happen, but he stuck with it. He went to go save Mr. Echo. He helped. So we're starting to like Charlie again.
Charlie, really, in further instructions, Charlie runs away with all the best lines. You are aware that I detest you, right? Like from the beginning, and they bring up fire and water. They bring up pushing him. The hairspray line. I don't want to be the one to tell you this, when he's grabbing the hair. It's like, come on.
Yeah.
It's like it does reaffirm the love for Charlie, but I think it's kind of insidious because the writers are clearly doing that to set up what Desmond is going to tell him in a couple episodes. So
yeah, I agree. But I think they almost. Because if we don't like Charlie, his death doesn't mean anything, right?
Right. So
I know it's television. They have to do something because it's like I said, what he did to Sun was inexcusable.
Right.
I mean, he did a terrible thing. So they're trying to rebuild his character, and so I had no problem. I do like the fact that when he's in the sweat lodge, when Boone tells him he has to get in the wheelchair. Because that's John Locke's biggest fear. Because earlier, I think it was the Tale of Two Cities, Kate goes to meet with Ben Linus.
Henry Gale.
I was going to say Henry Gale.
From
Ben
Minnesota.
Linus, and she has to put handcuffs on. And her fear of just having to put the handcuffs on again.
Oh, right.
And so she looks down and she goes, tighter. He goes, tighter. And so when Locke has to get in the wheelchair again, his biggest fear is going back in that wheelchair. I just think those are scenes that are kind of, they don't hit you over the head with it, but I think they're great scenes because you remember if the characters, Kate doesn't want to be handcuffed again, Locke doesn't want to be in a wheelchair again. Yeah, I just thought that was a great scene.
It's that question of who they were versus who they are, who they're making themselves be.
Right.
And that's just lost, is always questioning, is always showing. Like, I'm glad somebody was paying attention and would say that Kate would have that visceral reaction to the handcuffs, like, and then Boone's going to torture Locke by, like, having to wheel him around a little bit.
Right.
It's effective. It's just really, really effective.
I remember when I was watching this. I remember the first time watching this when Locke takes down the tarp and he's taking down all the stuff and he runs to the church. I go, is he going to rebuild it? He's going to finish the church for Echo because he thinks Echo is dead. That was my first thought because I wasn't thinking sweat lodge.
Yeah,
I did think there was a mistake. I tried looking. When Locke drives into the compound with Eddie, and he gives the kid Jeff or whoever he gives the kid Skittles or whatever. He's driving in there's a scene where he turns. I don't think Eddie's in the truck. I don't think Terry O'Quinn's driving the truck. I think it's a mistake. And I kept trying to freeze it. Almost became obsessed with it. And they couldn't quite get it, but I don't see Eddie in the truck. I'm just throwing it out there. Maybe
that definitely wasn't Central California, by the way.
No.
Like sometimes their locations definitely don't match up. They look too Hawaiian, but I mean,
it's tough to do sometimes.
Oh yeah, I kind of had that issue of like, where are they exactly? Because it kind of looks like Hawaii.
Right.
But actually, I was just looking this up on the Lostpedia, and there was an additional Eddie scene. There is actually a police raid on the commune, and Locke shows up at the end of it. It's actually on the season 3 DVD, according to what I'm reading. But it's nonverbal. Like Eddie's at the edge of a forest or something, and Locke is peering in as Jan and Mike are arrested. So,
Locke doesn't get arrested.
Locke, kind of walks away from that. But that would have been probably pretty similar to Sawyer's journey in the very next episode if Locke had negotiated with them to be let go.
Right.
I think it is telling that Locke's big question for Eddie after he's revealed to be a police officer or whatever. Is did you know it was me? Did you know I would be the one driving the truck? Was I targeted? And he can't help but take that a little personal, as I think we all would. We would all kind of take that a little personal.
Right.
But I remember the line was my live journal user account amenable for coercion when he says you were. That was an old profile I had because I found something entrancing about John's just eternal struggle to and failure to really be seen on his own merit until he gets to the island. But yeah, I mean, people rely on him. People on the island rely on him, and I think that's a really good place to be in. I mean, Locke is cool on the island.
Well, he could have been. I mean, I've always said, I go, Locke, because we were talking about Sun and Jen and how last night, how their relationship was really the influence from the dad was such a negative thing that because they truly love each other. And there's a scene where at the end where Saeed says, hey, after she gets out of the water and she's drying off, she goes, hey, we need to go. And he says, I think Jen says something like, I could never live without you. Because I've always said the scene at the season 6 where they both die together, I said, they got a daughter. I go, he's got a leader, but they're setting it up right there that Jen could not live without Sun, and that the dad influenced. So we were trying to go over who was better off after the plane crash. Well, Sun and Jen, for the most part, until everything happened, because they couldn't escape. They could never. There was no way they ever escaped the father, because the father has money and power.
Yeah,
he would have found him. And of course, Locke had another chance at life. He could walk again. He was in his element. He could provide. But when he found that hatch, he completely went back to old Locke, where he becomes obsessed with stuff and instead of being, I'm new Locke, I can do this. Now, of course, he's a great character. It wouldn't have worked if he was just providing the whole time. We wouldn't have cared about him. But if you look at people who were like Kate, could have been better off because she wouldn't been in jail. Well, she's kind of in jail right now because she's in a cage. But we were just talking about stuff like that, about how people were better off. It was kind of a good thing they crashed on the island. But
right.
Anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a good question of who was better off. But I mean, as good as it gets for these characters, they're still endlessly tortured. And their time on the island, that's really apparent in the beginning of this season. I mean, but Locke in general, everybody continues to torture him. He just cannot catch a break. And a lot of these characters go through absolute hell. And that is also why, the others are a whole other thing. But I think the show really, as a whole, leans really far into the psychological torture that the others are choosing. When they need stuff from the Losties, they're still choosing to torture them. Right. And that never sat right with me for the show as a whole, but it's compelling drama.
Yeah. Because I said last night, I go, Ben, all Ben had to do is go to Jack, say, hey, we'll give you Walt back. You operate on my back. Did we have to go through this whole? But of course, it's great television.
It's fantastic television. But what if they if they leveled with them to begin with, of hey, there's this guy Jacob. He wears white. He willed it for you guys to be here. Yeah. We're gonna, why didn't they come out with hey, we have hot dogs. Come on over to the barracks. The first day, totally different show, not compelling.
Yeah, I feel like all of their problems, because you're talking about how they're better off being on the island than their previous lives. But the reason why they're tortured every day is because of Ben.
Yeah.
It's all because of Ben. And I feel like his problem is that Jacob did bring them to the island, and their names are on the wall and not his. Right. It's a jealousy thing. He can't deal with it. And so he just acts like a complete turd. He's just.
I think that's a good explanation.
I feel like other than the smoke monster and polar bears, I think the people would be okay. There's really not too many issues. Locke meddling into the island and going into the jungle and stuff is the reason why Boone died. And he was the first major death. Joanna died, but that's because she went out into the ocean by herself too far, so
doing, buddy.
I still think one of those Dharma sharks or something was
yeah, it could have been.
Yeah.
But for the most part, yeah, the majority of their problems is because of Ben. He's the one that sent Ethan. He's the one that went in and took people out of the camp. He sent Juliet to take Claire. He's the one that had, Ethan strung up Charlie. Like everything is because of Ben's doing. And it's, all because of jealousy. And by this point in the game, like halfway through the series, he's not just going to start reasoning,
Right.
to get his back surgery.
Yeah, I think that's overall an issue that I have with this, like getting into, because the beginning of this, like these 6 episodes, what he did with Kate in the premiere, what he does with Sawyer in the next one, really just solidify him as the leader of the others. Like he didn't ever need to be that. He needed to be that. Like functionally, it serves to have one guy who's the big bad. But still, a part of me is like, they really didn't need to make him the head of like total everything on the island. Like I still would have, like, after the amazing arc in season 2, I'm cool if he has like even like a leadership role. But in seasons 4 and 5, and how much he's revealed to really be the main turd, as you say, really bothers me, because I think the character, they got a great idea. I think it's overused a little bit by the end of it, and so I think there was some serious Ben Linus fatigue that I was feeling even when watching season 3 for the first time. Like even when watching these episodes, I'm like, really? He's doing what now to Sawyer? Like, come on, man. Like it just felt so unfair. It felt so unbalanced.
He's really manipulative. I enjoy his character. It's the one thing we didn't have on Lost for the first 2 seasons was a real villain. We had Ethan. He had like a 3-episode story arc. And then the second season we had sort of, I guess, like Anna and Lucia.
Yeah, the Tailies.
The Tailies, kind of, we weren't really sure on who they were, and then if they were good or bad. And you had this
got killed off, so it was okay.
Yeah, and you have this thought of the others. So there never really was a clear-cut villain. And I think with Henry Gale, we didn't know. We didn't know if he was an other or not, and then we found out he lied, and then he said, well, that man did crash, but I took his identity, whatever. He goes through the whole thing. So these first 3 episodes are us actually seeing who he really is.
Yeah.
And so it's the end of the first, or the end of second season, really we only see him on the dock, and he gives out orders, and he sends Hurley off and takes the others and does all that stuff. So we really don't have a lot of backstory on him. So watching him manipulate, and then later finding out why he's doing what he's doing, I think it's pretty good stuff. I like that his relationship with John Locke a lot. It goes into the whole jealousy thing. A, his name's not on the wall. B, John Locke got healed on the island, and Ben didn't.
Right.
He has to rely on someone else.
Yeah.
Someone
he got sick on the island.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he has to rely on someone who is on the cave wall. Then you have him. I had a third one.
We had daddy issues.
Well, he had daddy issues, but
all the best cowboys have those.
He's never seen Jacob, and he wants desperately to see Jacob.
That's right. I forgot
and
about
that's something that I feel. I forget who sees Jacob in the cabin, and it really, really makes it makes him really mad. So this whole thing,
Locke saw him, right?
Was it Locke that saw him?
Was
in
it
the
Locke
cabin,
or was it Hurley?
Somebody heard his voice.
So somebody saw Christian in there too, right? Later on, I think it's Locke.
It had to do with that rocking chair, or that chair.
Right. Yeah.
He heard a voice, and it was either Hurley or Locke. We're coming up on it, so we'll find out. But yeah, it's this whole thing where he felt like he was special, and he's not.
Yeah.
Same with Locke.
Yeah.
Except Locke actually sees some of this stuff.
The problem with Ben is he's almost, as smart as he is, he's still like a child,
right?
Because you see the scenes with him and Juliet, and I love the fact that they did a great job of setting up Juliet as a character.
Yeah,
she doesn't bow. I mean, the book club where she goes, where this Adam guy goes, so Ben couldn't, Ben wouldn't read this on the toilet or something like that. Everyone kind of Ben's like a god to them, but not Juliet. Juliet goes, no, I'll do my job because I have to, but I don't bow down to you.
It's like
she sees Ben for who he is.
It's like in Star Wars how everybody is afraid of Darth Vader except for Tarkin. Tarkin kind of bosses him around.
Right.
And so Juliet definitely has some sort of a better grasp of who Ben really is than the other characters. They think that Ben is the fearless leader, and they'll blindly follow him.
Right.
And no matter what he does, they feel like he's doing what's right because he must have convinced them. But Juliet sees right through him.
And she sees how fragile it all is, which comes up in the next. She sees like the necessary line of manipulating the Losties to get them to do what they need to do or what needs to be done. And like, especially with Jack, this is in the end, I think, why she turns and goes with Jack is she sees how like really just it takes there's a lot of subtlety that I think Ben lacks. And she softens him, but she also tells Ben like what's reasonable. Like,
you know what's funny is that both we're talking about Julia and Ben, and they're not even in further instructions.
Yeah.
So further instructions, it's one of those things where I'm like, let's talk about something else.
Well, okay, we can finish off further instructions because we do see Nikki
like that
Paulo.
dynamic. Do we see Nikki and Paulo?
I had it written down here. I thought it was the next episode.
I didn't pay attention.
But when they bring Echo back to the camp, Charlie and I was telling Eric before we started recording, I said, my first thought was, who's this extra? They let the extra. I go, oh, wait, that's Paulo. And then I always hated to see when Nikki yells at Hurley. Like, who are you yelling? Who are you? We finally see you, and even Hurley has that look like, who are you yelling at me? Because Desmond has predicted that, that Locke would make a speech, and he's like, "What speech?" So now we're getting another side story.
I just love that the imploded hatch shows up in further instructions. Desmond, obviously, we mentioned earlier, running naked through the forest, but it's really setting up the precognitive man out of time thing that they end up doing with Desmond for years to come.
Right.
Is really compelling for me. It's like, oh, something cool is like, not only did the Scotsman not die, but they got something really cool to do with him. And I feel
like the Desmond episodes, the flashbacks are always good ones. Like, I don't think there's a dud in any of the Desmond flashbacks. Like, they really were able to sort of do some fun stuff with that character.
Well, it was another great character they brought to Lost. I mean, they had some clankers, but Desmond was not one of them.
Like that failed social experiment, Nikki and Paolo. It's like, but which I love, by the way. An expose is way up there for me in terms of a good one-off episode. But.
And that's one of those things. Like at the beginning of season 3, they didn't know how long the show was going to go for, and Lost was a huge hit, and they had great numbers. And I could see the studio saying, we're just going to do this forever. So it's like, well, if we're going to do this forever, we're going to have more characters. Because we keep bumping off other characters.
You got 20 extras over here.
So let's start expanding on these people. And halfway through the season, we found out, okay, we're actually going to have an end date. This is how many seasons you have, and there you go. They were the first ones out.
I've said from like day one, I said Nikki and Paulo should have just been on another part of the plane, the front of the plane.
Right.
They were in the other bathroom opposite Charlie.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Because Charlie survived; he was in the front of the plane. I've always felt that they could have been off by them, hiding out away from the others. There could have been so much more that they just kind of threw them out there, and Lost was just not that show to do that because, right away, we're like, who are they? When we knew they were coming on the show,
worth a shot. I think though that might play better during binge watching culture now. You know what I'm saying? Like I think. They feel like outsiders. They feel like, what the hell's going on? You don't belong on this show. Like when it was airing on network television.
Yeah, because we sat there for 2 years watching these characters. And then now
scene by scene by scene by scene.
Right.
I mean, there were websites that you could just go on there and find each scene, each frame from each scene that you could get, images from. So we knew they weren't there the whole time.
Yeah.
Anyway, they did the right thing eventually and killed them off. So you guys ready to move on to Every Man for Himself? So what were your overall thoughts? So we're thumbs up from you, Ralph, right?
I didn't really change my mind much. It was interesting watching it again. Like I said, I've rewatched Lost at least 10 times.
Oh, wow.
All the way through. And this is the second time I've seen this episode after the first airing.
It's like Stranger to Strange Land. I've only seen it twice.
Yeah. I've watched that quite a few times. The other one that I usually skip to is Across the Sea.
I live across the sea, but
we'll get to that. Mark me down for that one too.
Which one is Across the Sea?
It's the Jacob and Man in Black episode.
Oh, big fan of that, but it doesn't have a real impact on a lot of the other stuff. The Par Avion is one that I would skip time and time again if I watched it that much.
I don't even know what's on though. Like,
it's a Claire one.
Yeah, Claire episodes.
It's Claire's cell copier ones. She does the pigeons, the homing pigeons, and the.
Oh my God! What if every single character in Lost at one point sold copiers?
I mean,
one episode where they literally sell copiers.
It was a big business back in the day, so
yeah.
Everyone needed a copier.
Well, the show is all about how everyone's connected, right? It's all Xerox machines. That's how it is.
Yeah, they all work for Xerox. So
I think further instruction's great. Also, Locke gets the eye open when it first comes, and if he hadn't stood up and stepped like one step to the left, I'm pretty sure Echo's stick would have like impaled him. So I'm so glad that didn't happen. That was pretty nuts from that hatch implosion.
In the chat, we have KG said, I'm actually nicer than that. So I guess that's Ben, right?
Oh, yeah, probably.
I'm just wondering. And then Batch Out said, when I started watching Lost, it was season 2 premiere. So I entered the series through Desmond's eyes before I had to go back to season 1. Des rules.
Desmond is the best.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that Desmond's not a great character.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know anyone who doesn't. I've never seen negative stuff about Desmond, but I'm sure there's someone out there that doesn't like it. So Every Man for Himself. We have Desmond. It starts out with Desmond telling Claire she's got to move. She's got to move down to the beach because there's something wrong with her roof of her. And then, of course, Charlie comes over there. Hey, mate, what are you doing? I just got rid of Locke.
What's great about this is,
and you're good looking, so I don't need you coming over here.
What's great about this is a storyline that goes through the entire season. This is a nice setup to something that we see play out over the course of like all the episodes, right until Charlie's death. Spoilers, which comes real late. I mean, this is like second to the last episode.
Are we talking about Desmond's precog nature?
Yeah.
Because that technically, they do it in the previous episode with him saying that Locke is going to give a speech. And he gives that at the end of further instructions. So it's stretched the whole season for... Yeah,
it's pretty nice. And so that's what I like a little bit more about this episode than the Locke episode. Is the Locke episode really doesn't set anything up for the season for me. The Sawyer storyline is okay. It's one of those ones where once you see it, you don't really need to see it again. Sort of flashbacks. So there's a couple of flashbacks that are like that. Where you remember what happened. It's not really to the story. It's kind of nice. It kind of runs with the On Island story a little bit better. It shows him in prison cell. He's in the polar bear cage. And it shows him selling out to escape. And in this one, he's sort of agreeing and submitting to his captors to let Kate go free.
Right.
So it's kind of a nice juxtaposition between his past life and his current life. And that story what's nice about it is you see where he kind of gets his conscience from with his daughter. So it's kind of nice to see that full flashback story arc finish and complete, and then that sets up his sort of ideals on the island. So I really like the way this flashback works with the on island stuff. A lot. It's great character stuff for Kate and Sawyer. It builds on their relationship. It's always a tough relationship. It was funny watching it and seeing Juliet in scenes with Jack, and a lot of us probably assumed that Juliet and Jack would get together.
I know I did.
I did definitely.
But it's funny to see where it ended up with Sawyer and Juliet. Like,
how? I'm like, I'm still going, wait a minute, what?
It's my favorite relationship on Lost.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, good for you.
She saves Sawyer. I mean, she makes Sawyer.
Yeah.
He's the, like we always call him, he's the Grinch, where he has no heart, and then it grows 3.5 sizes. And it was because of Juliet. He finally found someone who really loved him, and he loved her. And
well, but speaking of this episode too, like Kate and the character work, I know they say like conflict is what really drives the development of the characters, right? But there's no better example than this episode. I mean, Kate having to say she loves Sawyer, Sawyer lying to protect her because he knows that they're all watching on the cages, and then also her later saying that it's when she breaks out of her cage, she says, "You're now lying. Like, not only are you no longer interested in escape, but you're lying about why." And that scares me most of all, she says. And I'm like, this feels like a real human relationship to say, like, that line. Somebody understood Kate like as much as it was possible to understand that character and their relationship. There, that is.
What I liked about this also is that Kate's able to get out of the cage, no problem. And up until this point, we've known her as someone who runs. And Sawyer even tells her, run. And she's like, as she doesn't. So that's a bit of a character switch that I enjoy. And it just goes to show you how much she actually does want to protect Sawyer.
Or does she also, she knows that Jack's there.
Or
is it I know it's Sawyer, but it could be also Jack, because she does mention, and he says, what about him? Because when Sawyer's talking about escaping, he goes, we don't know if he's here. We don't, he could be, I don't think he mentions dead, but he insinuates he could be dead. He goes, we need to, that's when he says it's every man for himself.
Freckles.
Yeah. So she could have been staying also because that's Kate,
Yeah. I think well, because Ben took her aside in the premiere and was like, the next few weeks are going to be hard for you. They have plans for them. I think Kate probably doesn't want to stick around to see what the plans are, but she does want to regroup she wants the whole group together, and she knows that Sawyer and Pickett are not getting along. I love how that pays off in this episode. That's so nuanced and dynamic with what happens to Pickett in this episode, but she knows that if she were to leave Sawyer, he would just get killed, and she doesn't want that.
That's true. Yeah.
I think that she definitely wants to stick around for Sawyer's protection, maybe.
Also, they probably want to save the reveal of Hydra Island for the end of the episode. So if she ran, we would have been like, where'd she go? Oh, nowhere.
Yeah.
So
true. I do one of Sawyer's best lines, though. I think it was this episode where he calls Pickett Chinatown because he's got the Band-Aid. I'm sure a lot of the younger people didn't get that, but it was
no, it's over my head. I thought he called him that because his nose broke like China, like it was so easy. But it's Chinatown with
Jack Nicholson.
Nicholson.
Yeah,
that's so funny.
But I it's one of my favorite Sawyer lines.
Yeah.
He also had one for Carl too, and I can't remember what it was, but it was Chachi. He calls him Chachi.
Yeah, I think as far as Sawyer episodes go, this is a really good one. I always like this flashback because I'm a big fan of Bill Duke. I'm a fan of the movie Predator, and Bill Duke's in that. And he's great.
Guy who plays the warden?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
He's got that mean. He's just got that natural mean look on it, where he just looks at you like, "Yeah, I'm an asshole. So what are you gonna do about it?"
Yeah, I love that in Predator, I love him because he starts kind of going insane in the jungle, and if you get a chance, watch Predator. I highly recommend Predator.
Yeah, I saw it a couple years ago. Really liked it. Cassidy, I was not expecting to see. Here's a character from Sawyer's other flashback episode that comes back, and with such news, you've got a daughter. Obviously, you already mentioned how it drives his emotional arc and shows kind of where he draws the line as far as who he cares about and why and when. But even just seeing Cassidy again, really, it was. She from the Long Con, I think was her episode. I think this might be the second time we saw her. I know she shows up in the flash forwards later working with Kate, which is just like the best thing ever. But like, again, you just get a really good guest star on the show. They are memorable. They leave a mark. It kind of, and you want to see them back. It's kind of like what you're saying about Eddie in Further Instructions. It's like, you're the guy who like technically could pull off a second flashback episode in the future. And so Cassidy kind of fulfills that void.
Right.
Yeah, we find out that Sawyer's in jail because of her, because
she pressed charges.
Exactly. It's where I can see where you get upset with Eddie, because Eddie just kind of just walks away and doesn't even flinch because John Locke can't shoot him.
But it seemed like there was a professional respect there between the two men, and it just didn't really pan out.
Right.
But
I do like that he deep down, he made a big deal. I don't care. It's not my daughter. I don't want anything to do with her. In the end, he leaves his whatever share he got.
Well, I want to say, I think what's great about that is that I think what changes his mind is the fact that Cassidy tells him that she just wants him to write his daughter a letter. And we know about Sawyer and writing letters and what that means. It reminds him of his childhood and him growing up without a father and a mother. And so I think that's what kind of struck a chord with him. And I think that's what changes his mind. And ultimately he sells out and he's not doing the right thing, but by doing this, he's able to help her out and sort of be the father that his father never, was. And I think that's one of the moments where, I've watched this episode, dozens of times, and it never occurred to me until this viewing that I was like, oh, she just wants him to write a letter. That's all she wants him to do. And I'm like, oh my God, if we know anything about Sawyer, which we do, is his whole first season story arc had to do with writing a letter as a child. And so I thought that was
great catch.
Really great.
That was amazing.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where I'm like, man, this show is so good. And even though I did not like Further Instructions, Lost could bounce back in just one episode. Boom, just like that.
Complete.
And when you binge them, some of the sort of nuances might get lost, so to speak. But I like that you're doing the Crazy Hank TV rewatch 2 at a time, because it still gives you time to breathe. Right. But you do, if you end up with a dud, you do get, you can always bounce back.
But I think I can't remember what was. I'm sorry, Eric, what was Fire with Water, but the next episode was really good. So
yeah,
like you're saying,
well, Stranger in a Strange Land and
Tricia Tanaka's dead.
Yeah,
there's a 180. But yeah, like, can we just talk about though how it's so unlikely that Cassidy will not know who the money is from in Clementine's name? Like, he's like, you got to make sure she's never going to be able to find out who it's from. It's like,
she's going to know
X amount of, she's going to know right away. Like, who else set up a random bank account in the town where I live under my daughter's name? Who else is that going to be? It's not the Make-A-Wish
much money. Yeah.
It's not Amnesty International. It's not friggin' Citizens Without, it's Sawyer. Like, you're going to know.
But in Sawyer's mind, I think he doesn't want to have the credit. I mean, you're making a great point. There's no way she would not know.
Like, it's not like she's going to read it on a paper, but in her mind or in her heart, she'll be like, oh, clearly that was
the government gave me $2 million or whatever the amount was.
She doesn't need to know the details. She's like, she'll know who it's from.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
Or it's a great long con where she knows that Sawyer would do this. And so she ate up the daughter.
Ah,
so that she can get the money.
Yeah,
a little payback, huh?
it's insidious.
Because do we ever see the daughter?
We may. I think we might.
With Kate,
Yeah.
right?
I think they do play dates with Aaron and Kate.
Yeah. Okay.
I think Cassidy
That's
and
right.
her kid, Cassidy and Clementine, and Aaron and Kate.
Well, that would have been a good twist.
Yeah.
That there was no daughter.
There was no daughter. she just brought in a photo of a kid.
Of a baby. Came out of a
to
picture
con Sawyer
frame.
that bad.
Yeah.
But and then she goes, "Con you."
Well, this episode is all about the con, right? Because Ben says to Sawyer at the end, in front of the island, he's like, "The only way to gain a con man's trust is to con him," and so that was the whole.
The greatest line is when Sawyer asked Ben. He said, "How do I know you just didn't paint an 8 on a different rabbit?" And Ben says, "You don't." Which is exactly the perfect line because he doesn't know. And that's what Ben's all about. And Ben, claimed that he cut open and left a thing in his chest, but he just doesn't know. Like Ben is leaving that doubt in Sawyer. And, how good is a confidence man with doubt? Not very good. Right. And so he's completely neutering Sawyer and just taking him down a notch. And which is great because we've seen Sawyer say, "I'm the new sheriff in town," and we've seen Sawyer withhold stuff from people and manipulate people and withhold items and stuff and and bargain with people. So it's nice to see that what's great about Ben, and I know you said you kind of have Ben fatigue, is we get to see how he's the perfect foil for every single person that landed on the island. He definitely has the advantage because he knows who everybody is.
Yeah.
But he's got an insane mind to where he can find what just gets under the skin of every single person.
Yeah, he makes it his business to know what makes them tick.
Yeah.
And
so he's a great villain, and I mean, he's got an answer for everything. It's great.
Yeah,
and it's kind of fun watching his flashbacks come up and kind of see his backstory and why he is like this, but then also find that he's somewhat sympathetic, but he's still a real bad person.
Yeah, I mean, parts of this episode rely on like body horror, like the whole cutting him open and the needle to the sternum thing. Like I'm just like, what is this show? Like this is awful here. This is terrible.
And the worst part too is that they're discussing where to go, and of course Sawyer's just strapped down. I mean, can you imagine the fear that would be? Like, hey, dude, that's my heart,
Right?
Yeah, so they take it quite far, but I think it works because you see a beaten Sawyer. You really, really do, and you're right.
So wait, Juliet made the incision?
Somebody did, because he looks down and there's
she's she's the only doctor, right?
She's a fertility doctor.
Yeah, but I feel like the only one that can do this. So this is probably Juliet's first time getting to Sawyer's heart.
Ah, nice. Nice. Yeah, that's pretty bad, but that's okay.
Hey, listen, we've been talking about this for 15 years.
I bet she touched his chest and was like, ooh, soft.
I like this guy. This guy's kind of cute. I do want to talk about the scene where Ben's shaking the rabbit, because I remember people being so upset about that scene, and I'm watching it and going, okay, is there special effects? Because it really looks like he's shaking the cage with that poor little rabbit in there. And it's just like, I remember people just being furious with that scene. I mean, I'm sure
that the Humane Society is on set. I think that's sort of a mandatory thing, is anytime you have an animal on set, you have to make sure. Yeah. So I'm sure there was it was cut around the actual rabbit. There wasn't really, for the close-ups and stuff, you can have a fake rabbit in there or whatever.
Yeah. Shot super well when it falls over. You can see when the fur is sticking out the holes in the cage, I'm just like, man, this is.
But it really shows Ben as a psychopath, because he's just the way he's shaking it, and Sawyer's like, "What are you doing, man? What are you doing? What are you doing?"
It shows the levels he'll go to manipulate somebody else.
Yep.
So
yeah, And it shows what a fundamentally good person Sawyer is, or at least not psychopathic, where he's like, he doesn't hurt small animals. You know, he's like,
Right.
what are you doing hurting this
Right.
small
Frogs. But
defenseless creature in
Yeah,
front of me?
the frog
That's what
didn't-
Sawyer is.
tree frog, but that, he was having he was having a bad day.
I forgot about the tree frog. Yeah.
We had more of Jack and Juliet in this one, but the intercom. She says the intercom doesn't work, and in the episode "A Tale of Two Cities," Jack hears "Let It Go, Jack" from his dad through the intercom, and it's always like, okay, was that just Jack because he was on those strong drugs and he wasn't eating, and was he hallucinating? But he also hears Sawyer being tortured. So is that Ben's way of? I mean, Juliet really might believe that the intercom doesn't work. But was that Ben's way of just kind of getting to Jack?
Is it Ben? Isn't it? Because Ben is occupied at the moment because he's arguing with Sawyer. Like whoever is pushing the button to let him hear it is probably not either of them.
Yeah,
I always think it'd be like it's either Jacob or the Man in Black. Or the island is manipulating Jack. Like, but in this case, it's giving him the upper hand by letting him know that Sawyer is alive and in the facility. Because when they take those precautions of blaring the alarm so Kate and Sawyer can't call to him, it's already Jack already knows they're there because he heard the intercom weirdly come.
That's true. Yeah, it has always bothered me. I always wonder what was going on, but that makes sense. And then we get to see Paulo. In this episode hitting. Was he hitting limes or
limes? I think limes. Yeah.
When you're short on food and stuff. I mean, limes aren't nutritious, but if you got some rum.
yeah.
Paulo's not very caring guy, I guess, but
no.
It's a real good. It's a nice execution of Desmond. He doesn't press the issue when Charlie comes to like Claire's defense and he's all macho, and he finds a way to get his point out by creating the lightning rod with the golf club. He finds a way to avoid the future, and that's what all these characters are trying to do is just make their own fate. So
I do like the line with Paulo though. He goes, "Are you going in the jungle with it? Because if you die, I'll be able to find it." So
take the 5-iron. I don't need it. And so when you go on your crazy suicide mission,
exactly, yeah. That was a good line by Paulo. But we don't see Nikki in this episode, do we?
I don't remember.
She was only there to yell at Hurley, I guess. But
previously, yeah.
Ben, we didn't talk about how Ben beats Sawyer. Just beats him like because Sawyer set up that trap to electrocute him with the.
Oh yeah.
And they turned it off.
Stick, man. Ben Linus is like what 5'4", but he carries that stick. He's good with it.
He is good with it. He knows what he's doing. Because we see that later on, don't we? There's another episode where he has that.
Fairly confident he kicks somebody else's ass with it too, but he it's like Ben has just had to defend himself too many times from people who are physically stronger than him, and Ben's gift is his intellect.
Quick question though: if Colleen was so important to the others, why didn't they get Jack in the first place? Now I know Jack said that there was nothing she could have done. I think it might have been Jack just being nice, but if you have a surgeon of Jack's capabilities and you have a fertility doctor operating on trying to save someone's life, wouldn't you go get Jack in the first place? Or does Ben want Colleen to die?
Well, he does tell Jack that, or he tells Danny that he wants Pickett that he wants Jack to sit there with her for a while. Which is really weird. So maybe Ben wanted her to die. I don't know.
I think what it was is until it was absolutely certain that they needed Jack, and it's not even, I think, under Ben's orders that Juliet goes and grabs him. I think Juliet does that completely rogue to get him. And we know he's not supposed to see the skeleton. He's not supposed to see the x-rays.
Right.
Because this all is hinging on Ben manipulating Jack to want to save his life. That's the whole thing. So the reason that until it became absolutely clear that they needed him to save Colleen, Ben would have absolutely sidelined Jack and been like, no, we can do this on our own, because he wants him to save him and not to save Colleen. Can't be like a 2-for-1 deal where it's like, Jack, I know you just saved Colleen. Can you now save me?
Right.
Like, you know, he really didn't want to waste the whole I saved one of you guys to prove myself thing until he had to.
Comes to where, he's a giant turd, like Ralph said.
It weakens his position, and he would have definitely sacrificed Colleen so that he could have the glory of being the one that Jack saves, kind of. But Juliet being good-natured, and this is what sets Juliet and Ben apart, is when she can't figure something out, she'll go and get help.
Right. Yeah, good point. We talked about Kate climbing out of the cage. She did that, but she goes right back in. Anything else that we on this episode? Flashbacks or anything we pretty much talked about?
The cool thing is the big reveal at the end that there is a separate island.
Right.
It's Hydra Island. I always liked Hydra Island. I thought it was kind of a cool place. I liked that that's where the polar bears were kept. And you can kind of fill in the gaps that they swam over to the main island. It's a cool place, and it plays heavily into the last season of Lost. I believe the Hydra Island is where the donkey wheel is, and I
believe so. Yeah,
sure. Isn't the
frozen donkey wheel?
Isn't the station on Hydra Island?
I never knew
so.
That they go there. I don't think so, because they go there from the barracks in that big time travel episode. They go there pretty quickly. It's Marvin Candle. He's woken up. It says, "Sir, there's a problem at the Orchid," and he gets there pretty quickly. They could have taken a boat there. But the runway is on Hydra Island because that's what they're building. That's what Sawyer and them are building, and that's where not Faraday, Jeff Fahey, Lapidus lands.
Lapidus, yes.
Yeah. Thank God. It's been so long.
I do like the ending scene though, because we talked about earlier where Ben has conned Sawyer and kind of broken him, and when he sees that he's on a separate island, and he goes, "There's your island over there." You talk about Alcatraz. He goes, "You know how you can't escape from Alcatraz." He goes, and how he just leads, "Oh, we can go back now." And Sawyer, just his look is just so broken, like he was broken at that point.
He double breaks. He double breaks Sawyer in this episode. He's like, I did you this whole thing about the pacemaker to cut your legs off, basically. But now you see that even if I hadn't done that, it would have been hopeless because there's no way to escape. And that's why it's so important that he needs. In the episode before Glass Ballerina, he needs the boat. Yep.
He goes, "Yeah, I got to have the boat." He needed that more than capturing the other people. So it shows why, because he wants them to have no chance of coming to rescue, the three people there. But yeah, I thought it was a great ending because you just see great acting by Josh Holloway that he's just like, "Damn, I'm done. There's no hope. I can't leave, can't escape."
Yeah, the Hydra Island in the show definitely benefits from the Alcatraz comparison, because Alcatraz is one of those things that stands out of time as you're just like historical. You're like, you think ghosts, you think prison, you think it just matches on so many levels. I think what this
and for Sawyer, someone who's been in and out of the prison system, it's a way to convey that this is a unescapable place. So, and
like you said, he's taking his knees out because now he doesn't have to worry about Sawyer trying to escape.
Yeah,
he's broken.
Right.
He can't because the flashback's about him conning his way out of jail. Well, there's no way he can con himself out of this one. There's just no way.
Another good line by Bill Duke. "Congratulations, you cheated your way out of prison."
Right.
Like, oh man. Which goes to show, like, you can get anything done if people are crooked enough.
Exactly.
So yeah, later on we get Jack is the one that actually bargains Sawyer's way off of Hydra Island. So
yeah,
Jack.
This just Sawyer getting just completely just rejected on every level. You know, he's getting beaten down by Ben and Jack.
Ben.
So
Poor Sawyer. Maybe that's what softens him, towards the end and makes him changes his ways, because people, maybe say, okay, did Jack do? Because there was that scene in season 2 where he goes, well, kind of, Doc, you're kind of my only friend on this island. And you're
yeah,
like,
that's a great scene.
it's like, wow, really? I'm your only friend? Because I think Jack looks at him like, really? I'm your only friend? But we want to love Sawyer. It's the whole.
Yeah, Sawyer's great. There's nothing better than Dharma Initiative 1977 Sawyer, where he's
don't you mean Lafleur?
Lafleur,
yeah, he's in the right place. He's with Juliet. He's got everything figured out. He doesn't have to, hide behind this tough exterior.
He has the next 30 years of cultural references to make that's going to go way over everybody else's head.
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, it's I like the way his character kind of evolves, and I like that relationship.
And then you have the sad part into season 5.
Right, but you know what? What's great is when they do in the finale, when they start touching each other to become like reminded of their time on the island, they save the Juliet and Sawyer one for last.
Right,
and that's the best one because it sets up the vending machine. They set it up at the end of season 5.
Right.
Yeah,
the vending machine, and it's so good. That's the best one. Where you get to see, because their relationship kind of became the most pure. It wasn't like filled with BS. Like it seemed like once they settled down and got into Dharma Town, like they spent, I think it was like 3 years or 5 years.
Yeah, 3.
Yeah.
Just living as like a perfect couple, and that's something you don't see on Lost is perfect couples. Even the married couples aren't the perfect couple. So there's I really I think my favorite relationship on the show is Sawyer and Juliet.
And someone pointed out yesterday when we were recording, I think it was someone in the chat, she became a better cook.
Yes,
she fell in love with Sawyer. So because she was because she brings
those cookies were anomaly. Cookies, that was an accident. The island conspired.
Because she brings Jack a burnt cheese toast sandwich.
But that's what's great is you're able to see how toxic Benjamin Linus is. Because in the Dharma heyday, everything was pretty peaceful. Everything was easygoing. You didn't have, they were able to live their life. With Ben in the mix, it was chaos.
Right.
Juliet probably burnt the muffins because she had a million things to think about because Ben Linus was such a turd.
It was that dark heart of the island that was in him from the water and the temple. And
or his dad was such an ass. I mean, that could have had something to do with it too.
Oh yeah.
Remember, his dad wanted to be more than just a workman. Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with being a workman.
Yeah, I agree, but he took it out on his son.
Right.
His son became the terrible, terrible person that he was. But
right.
So overall, we obviously liked this episode more than we liked Further Instructions.
Yeah,
I like them both. I like them both, especially because the music in Further Instructions, it's like that perfect synergy where the music works with the scene, with the edit, with the shot, with the character. Lost figured out what it wanted to do and isn't. Especially later in the season, like season 3 is my favorite, and it isn't slow, and it just really just kind of the momentum,
right?
It takes away.
One of my things that I like is that Giacchino, working on the show, never really got a single note on what to do. So his score from the first frame of Lost to the final frame of Lost was 100% his. He really didn't have to take any notes. He mentioned it in his at his most recent Lost concert in Ireland, which I was lucky enough to attend.
Oh, man.
and then which they recently put on
I'm
vinyl.
jealous.
They put it on vinyl through Mondo, so I have to listen to that still. But he does talk about how he had complete freedom, 100% freedom. So I don't even know if they did spotting sessions with the director. I think he just the way the schedule was so tight that he just went in and did the music. So if you can imagine him not necessarily knowing where the show is going, but to be able to create this mood and atmosphere and create this amazing piece of work, it's really a testament to him as a skilled composer. And man, he did every single episode. Not a single episode wasn't him.
I know I've asked you this before, but do you think does the show have the success without the music? Because the music is so important.
I feel like it would. I don't think that we would get the emotions that we get from the show with a lesser composer. Yeah. I mean, he started this, I think, this Lost started, 2004?
Yeah. 2004, yeah.
I want to say that's a year before The Incredibles. I think Incredibles came out 2005. I could be wrong. But The Incredibles was his first movie score, his first film score. So he was kind of a TV guy to begin with.
All right.
So, the fact that he got this show, I mean, we don't know what the alternate reality is if there was a different composer, but can you even imagine Lost with different music, different themes, different?
No,
it just, I can't imagine it. It just doesn't compute. It's such a part of the show. And what's great is that consistency from beginning to end. You have one singular voice for the music, and it just, by the time you get to the end, he's been on the same journey we have. And so he's going through the same emotions, and he's able to convey those emotions really effectively.
Yeah.
And
what's fun, you can't argue with it.
What's fun about the show is he could do romantic stuff, he could do action adventure stuff, he could do suspense. So like when you're talking about body horror, he can play towards the horror aspects of the episode. So I mean, what's great about Lost is that you have, like 6 or 7 different genres into one show, and it's all centered around this sort of serialized adventure. Some people could say, oh, it's a show about religion. Oh, it's an action show. Oh, it's a show about science fiction. But the thing is,
it's a shipper show.
Nobody's wrong. It's all of that stuff. And so to be able to have someone in there that can make sure that it all works together is pretty astounding. And the show, I think, based on the writing and the directing and the acting and everything else, would be just as popular. But the fact that you have that music in there,
the gravy,
it's like takes it to a whole nother level. And the thing I do like about the music is that I feel like growing up listening to film music my entire life, I think I was about 20 something in my mid 20s when Lost started. I never really heard people talk about music that much. But since Lost came out, a lot of podcasts and a lot of people I talked to about Lost would talk about the music, which is great because it doesn't really stand out and knock you over the head, but it's definitely present and makes you feel what you need to feel. So, I mean, we just lucked out. We really lucked out. So now I got to go listen to that album.
Well, I know. I'm going to buy that album right now.
It's like $60, I think.
Oh man!
But it's 3 LPs, and I believe it's the whole show. Horcia and Carlton Cuse do live readings during the. And I listened to what on there, and if all of that stuff is in there, all the back and forth between Giacchino and Jorge. But that was the third time I went to this Lost concert, this show. The second time was courtesy of Jack, who had to deal with a hurricane, so he gave me his ticket.
The hurricane that never came through.
This is the third time I've seen this Lost concert, and I've still yet to pay for one of them.
Yeah, I think it's one of. I'm glad I was able to give the tickets to you, but it was one of my biggest disappointments because
Right.
I know Jay and I were just looking forward to it. My wife's just looking forward to getting out of Raleigh. I go, what, hurricane? What? And then I think the winds were like 20 miles an hour. It's such a, I mean, not to make light of a hurricane, but it didn't really, it moved like the last day and we didn't get any of it. So it was like, nah, it's all right. Ralph had a good time.
Even for those that don't, really pay attention to the music, if you go to one of these Lost concerts, no matter what your attention level is as far as the music goes, listening to the music live is going to bring out emotions. I mean, there were a lot of places that were not dry, mine included, because you go to see this thing, and as soon as the music hits, you're like flooded with memories and imagery, and they'll have like slides up and stuff, and it just hits you like a ton of bricks. Like the whole journey of Lost, it just like all of the emotions just come out as soon as like the music starts playing. So,
well, most TV shows, because I've watched TV since I'm old, so I've been watching TV since the 60s, and I've watched a lot of the 50s shows. The music is just can't do what?
You didn't watch the 40s shows because it wasn't invented yet?
No, I didn't watch. I listened to radio shows, but no, it's just the music is canned. I mean, you have some of the great theme songs because you don't have theme songs.
They had better theme songs back then than they do now.
Because theme songs are just are either they don't have them or it's like a 2-second thing. But the music, it's like Magnum PI, a great theme song, but the music is just basically the same canned music for every episode. Whereas this is something different.
It's never full orchestra either.
No.
Oh yeah, I mean that's what makes Lost. Yeah. Yeah.
How many episodes of Lost are there? Like 118 or something like that?
Something. I believe it's 118, 120, something like that.
120 or so recording sessions with a live orchestra isn't cheap.
No.
I can't believe they just let them do that.
I just think it added to, like you said, it could have worked without it, but to me, and I'm not that, maybe Star Wars or a lot of the Good, the Bad, the Ugly with that music and stuff, a lot of the spaghetti westerns, it works because of that. But, like I said, the TV show, unheard of to spend that much effort on the music. And again, it was just one more directing, the acting, the writing, everything about it was just so top notch that, made it like I said, 10 years later, we're still talking about Lost, going back and rewatching, and people want to talk about it because it was so damn good.
Yeah.
Yeah, but 121, the two-parters, 120 and 121 episodes.
Okay.
So there you go.
So anything else you guys want to talk about, or do you want to give your information where people can find you? Where Ralph's going to do a public screening of Further Instructions in his hometown.
I like that theory, though. I did. Jack was talking up the theory about it being a flash forward, a secret flash forward. I like that a lot.
Yeah, it never came to fruition.
I know, but like
I was so into it. I said, yeah, I believe
the concept of a secret flash forward would have been the best.
Yeah, well, that's the thing though. Like that happens so much in the Harry Potter fandom, which I know a little bit more about, and it's just there's so many theories that I thought would have been the coolest thing ever, and it never happened. And I'm just like, why didn't they? I think less of the medium because the theory that we discussed never came true. It's nuts. But
that's why a lot of people I believe don't like Lost, the ending, because a lot of their theories didn't happen.
I think it's also just vastly misunderstood. People don't.
Yeah.
People don't get it.
The people that they were dead the whole time. It's like,
no, yeah, exactly.
Right.
But I think that both Ralph and I have already put dibs on future episodes this season. In
yes,
fact, the next couple of weeks, because I asked for flashes before your eyes and not in Portland. So I know people will be seeing us again soon. But in the meantime, you can find me over on Twitter at Spielerman, Spielerman, and over at the podcast Mugglecast, which is weekly.
All right. And Ralph, do you do anything?
Nah, nothing at all. I will say, if you guys like Lost, which I'm assuming by this point, if you listen to this, the last hour and a half,
That old show.
If you happen to like the character Hurley, I do a podcast with the actor who played Hurley called the Kaiju Podcast. It also requires you to like Godzilla movies and stuff. So that's bi-weekly. We've been doing it for over 3 years. We're wrapping up our bi-weekly format at the end of this year. And then we're probably going to go to more of a monthly format after that because we're just running out of really good movies to watch. And we're getting.
I can't believe there's been that because I watched a lot of them as a kid, but I can't believe there's that many of them out there.
We're gonna end our bi-weekly version of the show at I think episode 104, and
should end at 108.
That is about a half of what we have on our list. Well, actually,
wow, really?
Yeah. So there's plenty of them. But check out the Kaiju Podcast. But mostly go to @CasinoSkunk on Twitter, and then you'll have links there. Speaking of music, I just talked about this with Jay on his podcast. But there is, if you go to my pinned tweet, I break down the musical themes of John Williams for Star Wars page, which is only $1 to join up. But the first episode called Lightsabers and Leitmotifs, where I break down the themes of Star Wars, is free to everybody. So just go to my Twitter @CasinoSkunk, click the link on the pin tweet and listen to that. I'm really proud of that series. I've done all the Star Wars films with the exception of Solo and Rise of Skywalker. Those are coming soon. But yeah, I break down all the different themes from Star Wars that John Williams did. And some Giacchino, I did an episode for Rogue One. So if you like Giacchino's music.
And aren't you doing American Gladiators, something with American Gladiators?
That is a whole can of worms.
Because
I planned on doing an American Gladiators interview podcast with the gladiators themselves. It's
Nitro?
Yeah, all of them. I followed all of them, and I interacted with some of them, and I was like, okay, cool, I'm going to start setting things up. Something happened. The creator of American Gladiators is super litigious and will get mad if I do the podcast. Now, that might be an interesting podcast way to do the podcast, is talk about this guy who is crazy and refuses anybody to talk about American Gladiators without him getting paid.
Wow.
So I don't know if I'm going to do it. It might be an interesting angle on the show, but we'll see.
Because I was a huge fan of American Gladiators. In fact, right. I started working out. I was going to apply for American Gladiators, even though I'm only 5'8", and I think at that time I was 170 something pounds. But I got pretty. I was working out like 4 or 5 times a week, and my wife's go. I go. I'm going on American Gladiators. Because like there was some of the challenge. I go something like the one where you do through the gun, or you have the gun where you're trying to shoot the target.
Yeah, the assault.
I wasn't good at that. The football one, because I was quick and fast, I could have done that. There's a few that I would have, obviously with my size, I don't think I could have taken the pad and kept them from knocking me off. But there's some I go, I could do. So I said, okay. My wife's like, these guys are like 250. I play hockey. I beat half these guys that are bigger than me in hockey. I go, it's all about leverage. It's all about it's leverage. You got to get
the center of your core.
Exactly. Because I'd have guys coming at me like 280 pounds to try to check me, and you just get yourself positioned. Boom, they go flying over you. Yeah. So my wife just thought I was crazy, and then whatever happened, life got in the way, and I never applied for it. But I was in California at the time, so I could have done it.
Should have.
Awesome.
Yeah. But that was when I saw it, I go, I love American Gladiators. My wife thought it was the stupidest because it would be on like I think Saturday nights.
It's like Saturday nights, like late at night.
Yeah, and she goes, "What are you doing?" I go, "I'm watching American Gladiators." Oh, you're an idiot. And then she'd go to bed.
So they have a I don't know if you have Pluto TV. It's a free app where they have like something like 500 channels or something, and they're all like specific channels, and they just stream live.
Oh, really?
24-hour American Gladiators channel
with Larry Zonka and Mike Adamley.
Yeah.
Whatever happened to Mike Adamley? The guy
I'm not gonna. I can tell you. Would you want to know?
Because he was big on American Gladiators. He's also
He did wrestling.
He did the football. He did NFL games.
He I looked him up. He has a problem from getting hit too much in the head.
Oh, okay.
He seems fine, and they were able to catch this problem early, but he goes around talking about this illness he has.
Because he played football, right?
Yeah. And that's where he sustained his injury, and he didn't find it until a couple of years ago. But he goes around informing people on on head protection and stuff like that. But he's with it. He's not like a vegetable or something, but but yeah, that's what he does now. He goes around and teaches people about problems with head injuries in sports. So, but yeah, I we'll see if I do that show or not, because I just wanted to interview gladiators. How hard is that? But then I don't think how could you be sued for that? I don't see how you could be sued for that. Oh, the one of the gladiators text messaged or DM'd me and was like, hey, who is this? Do you work with the show? If not, be careful. You'll get emails from the lawyer. I guarantee it. And she was saying that she couldn't even write books mentioning gladiators without them wanting money. It's crazy. So I don't know. We'll see what happens.
Okay, I was looking forward to it, but
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. But if that becomes the show, that could be interesting. We'll see.
Yeah, I say go after him. Just take it on.
Yeah.
Anyway, this was a great time talking Lost with you guys, and I guess I'll be talking with you guys in a couple weeks. Well, Erica will be a couple weeks, and then you're down the road here.
Yeah.
Well, this was fun. A great time talking with you guys, and
always.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's all I got.
All right. Thank you so much.
We're out of here.
Going goodbye.
Bye.